Oh,
Yeah, going on.
Put this on there as well. My stuff is synced, so if one goes off, the whole lot will.
All right, we're good now, mate. I think it's streaming live. So when you're ready.
Days.
Happy days. Happy days.
Cool. All right, mate, we're in.
We're in. Let's do this. Andy, thanks for jumping on the call. I appreciate your time. A good chance for us to reconnect and talk about something we're both very passionate about, which is the health and fitness industry and building a successful personal training career. I hope to get to the question or sort of onto the topic about, do personal trainers need to learn more to earn more? But I'd really like to start with maybe you explaining a little bit about what you do. For people who don't know you, who is Andy?
So my name's Andy. I run a personal training business called More Than Muscle in Guildford, Surrey. And the main premise there is the traditional personal training model, where we get clients in on a one-to-one basis and we have coaches that deliver the sessions. So on one side of the scale, that's what I do. I run the operations of that business. I still do some coaching and I'm looking to scale that. On the other side of it, as you know, strength and conditioning is where my real passion lies. And I've done quite a bit of, courses. I've done my master's in strength and conditioning. I have a passion for sports performance, the way people move and all those kind of things. So I do look after quite a few young athletes as well. And now, as my age has worn on in the industry, one of my biggest passions, or in fact, my biggest passion, is making sure personal trainers have a career pathway. And I think that's where me and you have kind of knocked heads and come across paths again. You were one of my original mentors, you, Josh, Jeff. When I was young in the game, you guys were kind of like, we were like, oh shit, these guys are good. We want to be like these guys. And we kind of came across you originally. But yeah, so going back to career pathways with personal trainers, I think it's something we're going to discuss, but a lot of the time people don't last very long. It's a struggle, it's hard. And one of the things that More Than Muscle does is try and offer a career pathway for a personal trainer, because there's not many opportunities for people to do that, other than you either go on your own, you're self-employed, you do all the things that self-employed needs to do, or you go and revenue share with someone. And then there's obviously a ceiling to that as well, because your diary gets full and you're like, fuck, where do I go now? So we try to bridge that gap. And that's where my passion is now developing. It's like within the business, and then obviously external PTs who then come and ask me for a bit of consulting work. But that's kind of who I am.
Yeah, nice, mate. That's good to hear. You're still young, Andy. Come on. Not that old yet, mate.
I'm wearing a hat for a reason. Yeah?
Yeah, me too. Don't worry. Just coming up the grays, mate. Coming up the grays. If we rewind, Andy, like, where did it all start for you, mate? What made you choose this career?
So originally I used to play football. I played football at a decent level. As everyone, we don't quite make it. And we're like, fuck, what do I do now? I need to get a real job. So I was doing a bit of like PE teaching in schools, but I was still quite young and I was like not ready for the whole like look after kids. So I was like, I used to work with my friend Steve, who you know really well. And we were looking at each other and going, hey, if we work with adults, maybe they'll listen to us. What can we do? So we went and got our level 3s, got a job at Virgin Active where yourself and Josh were working. And then it kind of kicked off from there. We were PTing. We quite quickly realized that adults don't listen either. And we had to do a lot of growing up to try and get coaching across. And we were working, we were doing the whole thing at a commercial gym, growing, and we were watching people like yourselves moving on to that next step. And it was like, we want a piece of this cake. We want to do this ourselves. And that's kind of where it rolled. And I remember rolling onto a Charles Poliquin course. And I think it was either you, Jeff, or Josh who were like, you need to do this, man. Because at the time, Charles was like the main guy for courses. So I remember jumping onto one of his courses and it kind of revolutionized my identity on how I was doing things. And that's kind of where it rolled. But it was more to do with I was getting injured as an athlete and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I wanted to become robust, do better at my sport. And I needed to find work that would help me do both. That's kind of how it began.
Yeah, nice, man. You turned the passion into a job.
Yeah. And you realize that, there's a bridge between being the athlete and being the coach. And obviously now I'm fully in the coaching aspect of it. But I was in a period of time where I was trying to do both. and you never really grasp one or the other. You're just sitting on that fence.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely. What are your thoughts on like the personal training certifications? So, you jump into one of these things to get your qualifications, your reps. Do you think the personal trainers leave there with enough skills to be able to help their clients get results?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an entry requirement that you need to do. It's a ticket to you being able to be insured and do things safely, in inverted commas, so that you can begin your career. But I remember when I passed, I thought I knew everything. As soon as I passed, I had that ticket and I was the expert. And then you quite quickly discover that there's loads and loads of holes in your knowledge bank, be that from the science or even just human communication skills, or coaching skills. It's an entry requirement. And I don't think you'll ever find that out until you get on the floor and you start working with people, or you start working online with people. You start punching holes in your own service. You will never really realize how limited your knowledge is. And even to this day, like, I still think I know everything. Then you start working with someone, it don't work, and you go away and you plug those holes. So I think that's where that lies.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. I understand what you're saying. Like, it's to get your foot in the door, but there's obviously still a lot of room for growth after that. It's interesting that you say that, you hit the gym floor thinking that you know everything, and you quickly realize that you've got a lot to learn.
I remember, just going back to a story, mate. Sorry, I remember turning up at Virgin, and like, I thought I knew everything. I put the stuff down, started deadlifting, and there was me with I can't remember what it was. It might have been like 100K or whatever. And then Jeff turns up. It's in the middle. It's in the middle of Virgin. It's like, what it used to be like at peak time, packed. And he's just there snatching 70 for like reps of 12. And I'm like looking and thinking, one, he's doing it for 12, and two, who is this guy? And that just made me realize there was a whole world beyond what I even knew at that stage.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Put in your corner a little bit there.
Yeah, definitely. It woke me up, mate.
Yeah, 100%. I think when we start, there's that point where we do realize we don't know it all, and we can start to feel maybe like a fraud, or that imposter syndrome sort of comes into it. Now, I'm sure you've gone through moments like that, and you probably still go through moments like that today. How do you find yourself dealing with that?
It's a good question. I mean, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? You think you're an expert until you realize you're not an expert, and then there's a load more that you need to learn. But I think it's phasing. It's through phases. So like, I went into the gym floor with my level 3. I thought I was an expert. Then you realize, because you see people around you who are steps ahead. Then we fast forward, I start doing mentoring, and then you go, hey, fuck, can I actually do this? Have I even built a business? Am I even making a lot of money compared to, Richard Branson, let's say? And you start questioning yourself. But I think you have to always realize that within the box of your current knowledge set, there's a lot of people you can still help, because you still have an experience level based on where you've been previous. And there's people that haven't reached that yet. But I still think you need that open mind. And also, you should be seeking mentorship. You should be seeking other coaches' guidance and your circle around you, so that you can keep moving forwards. Because in my opinion, if you value coaching, then you will be getting coached. And if you don't value coaching, then clearly it's not the right role for you. So I think it's just perspective based like that. You need to be around, like, if you walk into the gym floor and you think you're the best and you are the best, then there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that saying? Because the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah. And that, like, it brings me on to the next question. It's like, now we're not always in a room. There's personal trainers that are working solo online. It's you, the camera, and your client. And it's even more important that you have your network of mentors, coaches, whatever, because it can get quite solitude, and you become set in your ways and you only do what you know.
Yeah, no, you've made some very good points there, mate. And I really want to dig into, a lot of what you just sort of said there. I really like the way you reflected on the fact that, when we do start, and as our journey continues, we have got more experience than a lot of the clients we're hoping to serve. And we don't need to know it all. We just need to be maybe ahead of our clients on that journey. I think that's a really good point that you made, and a lot of personal trainers can hopefully reflect on that and gain some confidence from the experience they do have.
I think the world's changing a little bit because we're now on social media. Our reach is far wider, but there was certainly a period in my coaching career where I started doing mentorship, but I thought the only people I could get to buy my stuff were the people that were around who were already maybe on my level or better or slightly worse. But there's a whole world out there of people that could do with your service. And it's just remembering that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think we'll get into that a little bit more as we go down, and that's a good topic to sort of bring up. You've already mentioned Charles, and Charles Poliquin, and obviously some of the courses that you've been there and done with him. Charles was a big advocate of you need to learn more to earn more. So can you talk to me about, maybe how you learned to become a successful personal trainer? Who were some of these mentors, and, what was the course of action you did take to upgrade your skills?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, but I think it started from being in a dressing room at football and, having coaches that were crap, having coaches that were good, but also those guys that were storytellers. There was always something that had happened that you would resonate with. But secondly, if you know about the world of football, every year or every time a new manager comes, there's a whole host of new players that come into that dressing room. So fundamentally, having good social awareness and being good with people, I feel, is one of the biggest stepping stones that I had in my career, is that it doesn't matter who's in front of me, I'm going to be able to communicate with you and basically not be a dick. Because I fear that a lot of the time in the industry, there's so much insecurity that people don't actually open up. So fundamentally, I think it starts from you. It's like you need to be vulnerable to move forward. You have to expose your vulnerabilities. Otherwise, that closed shell doesn't allow you to move forward. So that's number one. Although I did Charles's courses, and Charles was like, he's a legend. There's people that love him and hate him. But at the end of the day, he had a pure identity. And it gave me my identity to start and seek more in that field. But it was actually people like Derek Woodski, who I ended up training with for like 2-3 years, that I learned way more of. I mean, don't get me wrong, the principles were the principles that you would learn, but the real world shit of how to program, how to deal with people, how to work when you're not feeling great, and all these kind of things. Derek was a big influence on me. There's people like Stefan Cazalt as well, who I think is awesome. But then moving away from that, I did courses with people like Douglas Hill, who is Be Activated. It's all trigger point therapy, kinesiology, and things like that, activation techniques. That gave me a different perspective to like the sledgehammer strength and conditioning work that we all love. And then my uni degree is massive. There was people like Dan Baker, who's massive in Australia, Dan John, who's a big and older head. So he came at it from a different perspective. Dan Cleather, I'm actually reading his books right in front of me, actually, but on biomechanics. People like Steve Magnus, who Science of Running, that's what he's famous for. But there's just so many, and I can't pinpoint it on one individual because it was little fragments of everything. But just to put it into perspective, I think I'm touching 6 figures on how much I've invested in my career, or close to. And it's like, I think that's the perspective people need to realize, is that it's not just about learning more to earn more, but I think you can't save yourself to wealth. You have to, when your box is gone, I think you have to invest to take that next step.
Yeah, I like that, mate. Can't save yourself to wealth.
And I've been there, mate. It's like counting the pennies, and you're like, but truthfully, every time I have gone and done that investment, there's definitely been a return on it.
Yeah, 100%. Mate, like you've reeled off a great selection of coaches there. I want to know, like, are you always learning? Is there ever a moment in that career, in that journey, where you've probably not been learning?
I'm not going to blow any like false dawns. There's times when I get stagnant. I'm human like everyone else. And it's like, you start going on Indeed.com and you're like, what else is there? And you're like, why am I doing this? I love my career. I love what I'm doing. And I think the major thing is understanding that you need to take time away from it as well. Clear your head and then go. Because if you're always constantly chasing the learn more, earn more and all that, you will burn out. It's the same as training. You need restoration. So I'm definitely guilty of doing that. It's like 1,000 miles an hour all the time because it's what I love doing, but I do burn out as well. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a very common thing that we see in the industry because we do push ourselves so hard and we're in a serving others industry. So we're putting our clients first and we generally put ourselves second. I also believe the fitness industry doesn't do a good job of supporting its staff. You know, we're working such long hours and it really promotes the quantity over the quality. Would you agree?
Yeah, and definitely, it's like it's a numbers game at the end of the day when you're trying to earn more from it. So I feel like people are in that rat race of more clients, more clients. But at the end of the day, if your revenue going up is causing you pain, which a lot of the time it is, then you have to question whether your model is going to help you. Because at the end of the day, if you can't serve yourself, good luck serving others. And you need to find a position where fundamentally you're happy. Secondly, you have play in your life, a bit of joy. And then you will actually find that your servicing of your clients is tenfold. It's so much better. You can charge more, you get better results, you have more referrals, and then you have an opportunity to scale. So I think that's a major problem. And partly it's because the rental models at gyms are so expensive. Living in cities like London is unbelievably expensive at times, that people are going in and undercharging themselves because they go, fuck, I've got rent, I need to pay for it, blah, blah, blah. But what they're actually doing is creating a circle of defeat there. You're going to hit a wall. And I think it comes back to exactly what you say. Are you skilled enough to command the servicing and the pricing that you need to warrant a service-based business? It comes down to that.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I think sometimes it can be a race to the bottom. If you're working in that gym environment where you're paying rents and you're competing against all of the other personal trainers, you know, who's setting the price? Are you setting your price, or are you being influenced by the other trainers because you're competing for clients?
Yeah.
You mentioned positioning yourself there as maybe a specialist or being able to charge more. What sort of model do you see that, or how do you see that being possible?
Yeah, I mean, listen, before we get into the structures of model, people always say the market is saturated. There's so many PTs, but at the end of the day, there is always space for a 5-star service. So the market is there.
Yeah.
Once you have that in you, that you're going to deliver like a 6-star service, you're going for it, it's going to be the best thing that you could possibly do, and you're going to continue to improve it, then the model is entirely what you want to make from it. Now, it's either you charge more, which gives you space to then do whatever else you need to do, you have more time in your diary, or you find ways to service more people at one time. So you see a lot of the online stuff now where it's a mass coaching thing. Everyone is completely in the same goal frame. And you can coach on a mass degree. And you look back before the online game came, and you look back at, like, for example, Charles Poliquin's model. It was, we have a course, you have 6 months to complete. That model. Are we still there? Have I lost you?
You're back now, mate. You dropped back for a little bit.
Did you get that or not?
You have 6 months to complete that module.
Yeah, so you got like 6 months, for example, to complete it. And then what you found was it was the same model as what these online programs are now. It was mass coaching. You would come in, you do 1 or 2 days live, get your certification, that 90-day program or that 180-day program, 6 months is done, next batch in. They were using that model then. But it always comes down to, at the end of the day, if you went and worked with those guys one-to-one, you were paying a premium because they needed space to deliver the mass coaching. So I feel like your service should have a service ladder. And you are constantly working at refining your service ladder throughout your career. You've got your premium, you've got your mass, and you've got your low-level stuff. And it's up to you how much weight you have where you want to be, because you might delegate out some of the other stuff. But just focusing in on, you know, I'm going to work for X and this is just my hourly model is where the problem lies, I think.
Yeah. I think it's a trap, and it's that the way the industry's been set up, we're selling time for money. And at some point, you're going to reach that limit. So if you don't come up with another model or figure another way out of that, then you're just going to be competing with every other personal trainer, like you say. I think it's easy to become overwhelmed. There's so much information and there's so much opportunity. I think there's always opportunity, like you said. How do we go about choosing that focus and avoiding discipline? You know, there's workshops, there's seminars, there's workshops, there's seminars, there's certifications, we've got online courses, you've got social media, you've got podcasts, you've got books. There's just a ton of information out there. You know, what would your recommendation be? Like, where should we start with this?
I think that you could try and sit down, do your SWOT analysis, do all like these models of work where you're going to try and project your business, find models, find courses. But the truth is, it's never going to be as neat as you think it's going to be. And there's going to be elements of struggle along the way. So I think the best approach is a plug and play. You go and work, where it's not working, you refine, then you do the things that you need. And when it comes down to schooling and seminars and stuff, what I've always done is I've worked hard, I've got my results. Where it's stuck, I will then go and service some education. So I'll always go towards the education stuff that I need. So lately it's been things like marketing, it's been things like business, because a lot of my role now is operational rather than on the floor. But previous to that, it was like assessments, because my model was about getting results. So if I don't assess, how can I present a good result, or how can I even intervene and be really like to the point with it? So I think plug and play is really important, and you have to get in front of people to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point that you make, I think, there, Andy, because I think a lot of people, we get sucked in, or a lot of trainers, we get sucked in. You know, there's one guy in the gym who's just gone and done a mobility course. He said, oh, that's amazing. Or he's done a nutrition course, and you start looking at that and get pulled in that direction, instead of trying to think about, okay, what do I need right now to service my clients? And assessment's probably a really good place to start for a lot of personal trainers, so that they can start to obviously assess and then build a program, you know, from there, and take the next steps as they go along. You know, you started talking a little bit there about, you know, the career mentoring that you're doing. How does that sort of look? You know, what can PTs expect to do if they were working with you, or how do you structure that?
It's a good question, because that's revolving for me also. It's, you know, I've been doing this for a while, but I'm revolving my model like we're speaking about. It's like, how do I make it better for myself, but also so that those coaches can get better results? But the long and short of it is, most people will come in, and I have two different models. It's startup and scale up. Basically, startup is you're a newly qualified personal trainer, and we get you going to your first 5K, let's say. And we will audit you. We will see where you're currently at, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then we will look to help you grow. Be that on the gym floor, because I think that you're really weak there, or be that you need to start structuring your business. And with a lot of the startup guys, it's things like registering your business properly. Have you got an accountant? How do we sort your website out? What model are you using? Let's practice in front of a camera, because a lot of them are still scared of making a mistake. And it's like, it's okay to make a mistake. You just need to own up to it when you've done it and learn from it. So there's a lot of that stuff that's done with it. And then it's like, so a lot of the time with the startup guys, I say to them, I introduce them with, put your philosophy down on a piece of paper. And they sit there and they struggle, but they get me something. And then 3 to 6 months down the line, I get them to do it again, and it's completely different. But that just smacks them in the mouth on how much development has happened in that 6 months, but also where they want to go with it, because they start getting an identity. The scale up side of it is people that are, you know, pushing 10K plus. And as you're aware, you can't just keep working harder to make more money. You have to put systems in place. You have to delegate the things out, like your calendars, like your marketing, like the things that you shouldn't be doing, because at the end of the day, you're a coach and you do what you're good at. So that you can also be fresh enough to deliver a good one. And then what your model actually looks like in order for it to carry on growing without killing you. So that's kind of the difference between the two. But yeah, I'm still revolving it. It's, you know, the more interest I generate from it, I have to find better ways of servicing everyone. And what I'm finding is I'm going less and less towards working with people, individuals, more and more working with everybody together who have got similar goals and targets. And I feel like that's the best way to go with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, mate. It's interesting that you start to talk about, obviously there's the skills in the gym, like being a personal trainer, delivering, you know, results to your clients, working face-to-face with your clients. But there hasn't really been much focus on the business stuff. Like when you and I
Yeah.
were first back at Virgin, like, we'd go and do Charles's course, or we'd go and learn, energy systems, or we'd go and do something on those lines to help us in our career. But there really wasn't much support in terms of career development or this career growth. What do you think of the industry now and where it's heading and all the career advice that's starting to pop up?
Yeah. I actually had this conversation with Nat yesterday, and it was like, I was like, do you remember where everything was about coaching? It was like every course was like, how can I do better? And I love that because I'm a coach fundamentally. And it seems like there's less and less of that about, and more of the business side of stuff, which there's definitely a place for it, because ultimately, as you've seen over the last decade or so, PTs are one of the worst at getting their invoices out, registering their business, managing their money. And it's like, you can have a fantastic career and you just need to get your eggs in line. So I feel like there's a huge part of that. The only danger I have is that I feel like a lot of coaches that have hit a ceiling with their PT are just going into the business side of things because it's like another avenue for revenue. And I still think you need to pick wisely on who it is you go and service your education with. But absolutely it's needed, because the majority of us are left to our own devices, and it's finish your PT, go get a job. Oh, wait, the commercial gyms are now dying, so I can't go and work there. I have to go to a studio where I have to provide rent, but there's no members, but I have no income. What do I do then? Or I can look at some of my buddies who are huge influencers and making big cash and just try my hand at that. But ultimately, that doesn't happen overnight, and you need to make some money to pay your bills. So I feel like it is absolutely necessary, because how do we have a career? And it's a tough one. I just think it's absolutely necessary, and it should be a fundamental part of the level 3, and it's not. Yeah.
I'm with you on that, mate. I think that there's not enough skills that personal trainers are leaving that base education with these days. A lot's changed. You just talked about the commercial gyms are now struggling. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic and everything that's happened, a lot of gyms have closed down. A lot of personal trainers are really, really struggling. And there's been a massive shift in terms of moving online. Classes online, PT online, templates online. It just keeps growing and growing. Is this the new normal, do you think?
I think the new normal is the old normal. People want interaction. So I think how you get that out to people is up to you, and how good you are at doing it, and how much social proof you have of people going, this is the shit, man, I need to use this. However, the fact that lots of people have started doing online and have social proof of it being successful means there is a market for it. Now, before the pandemic, I had to really market it out there for people to select the online version. Whereas now people just inquire like they would always inquire, but say, hey, do you do online services? So the fact that we don't need to work as hard to sell it is showing me there's definitely a market for it. So it is the way the world is going. I think also the fact that people are living such a fast-paced life and that they can't commit to come and see you all the time is another reason why it will be there. And as technology gets better, it's going to be more realistic for people to work with you. I mean, I remember doing online training with simple like phone call, pen and paper, and ringing my clients and saying, hey, write this down. So what it is, A1 back squat, A2 leg curl, and they would write it down. I'd explain everything to them. And then once every month, they might pop into the gym and I'd just have a little assessment with them, see how they're going. Then that like evolved into WhatsApp and voice notes. And now you've got fully fledged apps and Zooms and all the rest of it. So it's going that way, mate, and it's going to be there. And you'd be dumb if you didn't look into it.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Now you're starting to show your age, mate, if you're saying that you were asking on PT over the phone.
I'm still working out how to log in. Waiting for that dial-up tone.
Yeah. Does this make it harder for new PTs though? Like we talked about it before, like if you're working in the gym, really your competition is the personal trainers working in the gym. If you're going to go online, now you're competing with every other personal trainer that's online. I
think it doesn't make it harder. And that's where it might be a little bit controversial, because everyone goes, the online space is very difficult to master, because although you have a bigger reach, you're also a small fish in a big pond. But I think it always comes down to the fact that most personal trainers last about 6 months, right? And then they leave because it didn't work. And what people suggest in business is that you have 6 months worth of burn rate before you start. So make sure that you've got some funding to get whatever it is you're going to do going, so that you can sit and do the rightful things and invest in the rightful things to get yourself going. And I think that's where the problem lies. And that's where a lot of my startup work is. It's like, where are you at? What do you need to get the thing that you're doing going? And if you haven't got 6 months burn rate, what can we then do to give you a little bit of cash flow whilst you build what your ultimate goal is? So I think that is the major problem, rather than the medium you're going to go down, because people have shown you can do it. But are you positioned in a way that you're not going to hang yourself before you start? That's my key.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I resonate with
like
that.
For example, I was an online coach. I started on the field, but like on the field, it gave me revenue to transition over, and we still do both. But you might have to start getting revenue elsewhere to get yourself going, or you have that cushion so that you can then slowly make the trajectory where you're going to go and do the rightful things to get your online going. But I don't think it's the model's problem. It's your issue.
So down to the new trainer, and it's being prepared, I suppose. There's lots of people that transition into personal training. So your advice would be, you've got to come with a bit of a buffer and expect not to be making money for the first 6 to 12 months. And
the second thing, Stretch, is that it's not easier. So don't go into it thinking you're going to sit on a deck chair with your iced coffee looking out at the sea. Although if you crack it, good luck to you. You might be able to do that every now and again. But, you know, what really annoys me is when you see a lot of the media coverage of it being, or the marketing side of it being, you don't want to do one-to-one because you're tied to the hour. Go online. Now, you're not tied to the hour, but you'll be working hourly. And you'll be working on your media, or on your ideas, on your programs. You'll be working constantly to get it going. So it just transitions to another element of work, and you might find you enjoy that better. But if you get that going, there's way more growth on it, in my opinion, because you're not tied down by space and you're not tied down by times.
Yeah, exactly. I think it gives you more freedom as a PT, but it allows you to service more clients because they're not dependent on your schedule, or they're not dependent on the availability of the gym. I think the online space is definitely the area that's going to grow. You mentioned there that it's good for PTs to have a goal. Like, I think when we first started, when we're at Virgin, our goal was maybe to train a certain number of clients or help a certain number of clients get results. What sort of goals are you talking about now for personal trainers? If I'm going to start a career, are you setting long-term career goals? Are you setting 6-month goals? What are you recommending?
As in PT staying in the game? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think the first goal is make the 6-month mark. Are you still here after 6 months? Because if you are, you're probably doing something right. You're growing in a certain direction. I always set myself a goal of doing a course every 6 months, or doing some mini thing that's going to enhance my career. And I think that's really important. The other goal should be, whenever you feel like your knowledge bank is emptying, you should seek guidance, because that will propel you and it will stop you getting stagnant. And the final one is have financial milestones that you want to hit. Now, I know a lot of guys come to us and they go, I don't want to be that guy. Now, none of us want to be that guy, but at the end of the day, if you push your finances to where you need them to be, you open up a world of better lifestyle, better quality of service in your clients. You feel fulfilled, because I think that's the major problem we have when we get really busy and we're not getting paid what we should be getting paid, is your fulfillment goes, and then you start hating everyone else when really it's you that needs to start commanding that. So little things like that. Have yourself your KPIs. Make sure you hit your KPIs. And if you don't, you're constantly analyzing that so that you can make the changes necessary to grow. So I find that's a major issue when you're on your own. Because when you're on your own, you have to be your boss, you have to be your chairman, you have to be your CEO, and you have to be your finance guy. And really all you are is a trainer, because that's why we got into it. I like training people. Or even still, I just like doing bench press in the morning. So I started working in the gym. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I think it's a different kettle of fish if you get into a partnership with someone, because you can knock heads, and yes, it can go bad and it can go right, whatever. But when you're on your own, those are the things that you need to consider, because you need to have something to hold you accountable.
Yeah, yeah. I like the way that you pointed out the financial part of it, because I think a lot of personal trainers do say that, oh, I didn't become a personal trainer for the money. But at the end of the day, if you don't start to take control of your finances, how do you know if you're actually making progress in what you're actually doing? It's a tool that we can use, obviously, to measure that progress and see what's working and what's not, and being able to adjust our career, obviously, around that a little bit, because at the end of the day, you've got to get paid if you're going to stay in the industry.
Yeah.
And it's an important factor, you know.
The other thing, sorry, mate. The other thing is that if you don't move forwards, the industry is. So don't get left behind, because when your gym puts the rent up, when Google wants more money for AdWords, when all these things move forwards and you're not, you just make it very difficult for yourself to grow, because then the gap's wider. So you have to stay in line with the time as well.
Yeah, it's ever changing, isn't it? Like you say, with the industry's changing now, and it's probably changing faster than it ever has before. And with that, the costs come up. You know, there's so many companies and organizations out there now capitalizing on this. Like you said before, there's apps out there, there's new technology out there. Everything's just starting to come up. And I think, you know, personal trainers are going to have to up their skills to keep up with the technology that's there. Yeah. You mentioned earlier about mentors. You know, you said that obviously you work with Derek. Has that been probably the best experience that you've had in terms of developing your knowledge? And is that something you'd recommend to trainers? Like you said before, a coach needs a coach.
Yeah, Derek was great at the time that I was using him, because at the time I was using him, it was learning about program design. And I learned a shit ton from the Poliquin principles, but putting them into practice is what he gave me. And then he also gave me his perspective on why he thought some of those principles weren't right, which was cool because he was a lecturer for them. Yeah. So you got this real world thing, but that was one perspective. I've always had someone on the coaching side of things. So currently now we're working with someone who's local, who does weightlifting, and we've started getting into that kind of thing, and you learn that stuff. So I think always having someone on a training perspective is great. Ever since I opened a business away from Virgin, when you had to stand on your own 2 feet, I've always had a business coach. And the business coach is the same business coach I've had for the last 11, 12 years. And the investment I've had with him has helped me tenfold, because I've never, ever seen a downward trend. So in order for that to marry in the right way, I know that was one of the best investments I have. And now, all right, people might say you should change and see different things, but I think there's value in sticking with someone and growing with them also. Yeah. So he has been one of the biggest improvements to my business. You know, heck, we went through a pandemic and we saw an upward trend. So thanks, mate. He's helped. But the other thing that I think that really helps you with, and it's why coaches should always have a business mentor, is that when a client leaves you, because it happens, or when things don't go the right way for your business, you have an emotional attachment to your work. And then things scramble because you're like, fuck, I need to do this, I need to do that. Whereas the business coach will just go, hey, mate, carry on doing what you're doing. Do X, Y, and Z because this needs improving. And you have a pragmatic approach to doing the things that you should be doing, rather than just leading with your emotions, which I'm very guilty of. And I think if you are a business mentor, or business owner rather, you are going to have elements of up and down with your emotions. So I think that is a huge thing that you should be seeking. Yeah,
100%, mate. I think it's a big step up, isn't it? If you've been working at the gym and someone else is managing the clients, and it's a commercial gym, and then you step out into your own business, or even into a PT studio where now you have to attract clients and you have to look after your business. Yeah. That skill set goes from just being a personal trainer to, like you said before, you've got to manage your accounts, you've got to manage your marketing, you've got to do all these additional things. How important is that time management factor? Like, that's another skill that we're really not taught that well, is it?
Yeah, it's huge. Again, it's like, if you can't manage your shit, how can you expect your clients to manage their shit? And you have a responsibility as an idol, as a mentor, as the coach, to show them and inspire them on how they should be managing their shit. So I think it's huge. But other than just like you reflecting on your client base, you deserve it yourself. you deserve it yourself to actually have that freedom and have that clear headspace. And, you know, some of my best business ideas, not that we've had loads, but some of my best business ideas is when I went on holiday. We sit on a deck chair and we go, fuck, ding, light bulb moment. And it's because you're just giving yourself some space away from the rat race of servicing others. So time management is key, but also having time to spend on your business rather than in it is a big key, because most trainers will just work on what's happening inside the business. And if you do that, you will never really scale and grow, because you need to dedicate time to doing that. And that's probably the major thing we work on when we do the mentorships together.
Yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned. Like I said, I agree with you that we spend too much time in the business and not on the business. You know, right now you're in a partnership, and I think even when you were working back at Version, you know, you and Steve, you know, really connected. And I think you did a lot of work together. Do you think that's an important part of it, like collaborations and potentially maybe joining up forces? Because is it too much for one person, or what do you feel?
I think I've learned lots of good lessons from it. It is fantastic when it works. It can be a real burden on you when it doesn't work. And the right people have to be around you. And the stuff that didn't work because of business. It didn't work because of other things. But like, the biggest thing I can relay to people is make sure your partnerships offer something different to what you currently offer. Now, one of the reasons why my current partnership works is because we're in a relationship together. So it's one pot, really. It's not a great partnership in terms of two different pots you share, but it still gives me two manpower. But I think when you're doing it externally, it's like, well, for example, one of you is the PT and the other one of you is IT based or finance based or marketing based or journalism based. And if you can create those partnerships, you've grown, because you're adding assets to what you have. But when you're all the same, all you're actually doing is sharing the output, but not helping with your input. And I think that's the key. That's the key, is making sure that you select wisely in who you're sharing your asset with.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that, mate. 100%.
It's hard because, like, especially like we get involved with mates, because we always have, and like we've never fallen out about stuff like that. But it's like you can clearly see that we've got into it because we had a passion for it rather than because it was the right business venture. Yeah, and that's what every young lad does, right? It's like with your mate, let's do it, man. Let's see where we can go. Let's take over the world. But you soon hit a ceiling.
Yeah, 100%. Who's the boss in the relationship, mate?
It's live. I definitely wear the trousers.
Glad to hear it, man. Now, if I could take anything away and like summarize, you know, what we've sort of talked about today, I think we could both agree that, you know, PTs have got to continue to learn if they want to grow their career. And if you do want to earn more, you've got to learn. But it's about learning the right stuff. It's not about collecting a list of certifications and having as many letters after your name as it is. That's not necessarily going to help you build a sustainable business. Is there anything else you want to add, mate, besides, you know, sort of what we covered?
I think the main thing that I have researched by working with people who are PTs is that just get out there, get your hands dirty, make your mistakes, and plug and play. Because too many people don't do anything because it's like, oh, is that the right thing to do? And I get DMs from people all the time who I've worked with previously or I'm working with. It's like, do you reckon I should do this? And I'm like, unless it's a real stupid thing, get it out there, see what happens. You will grow from that. And then the second thing is make sure you position yourself so that you don't sink. If you stay afloat, then you've got time to grow. If you don't stay afloat, good luck. That's kind of the two elements I think people need to take away.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. Like I said, I think that the imposter syndrome is a really big topic that, you know, we can talk about just in one conversation itself, that overcoming that fear and that fear of failure. But I'm sure you've failed many times. I've failed many times, but we just get back up and keep going.
Yeah.
And
I think also a stretch is that, like, going back on the imposter syndrome, it's like, don't be an imposter as well. And it's like, it's okay to have imposter syndrome. We have that. But then fundamentally, if you're there for the right reasons, you will overcome it and you will work to get better at things. If you really are an imposter, you will always be an imposter and you will get found out. So it's like, do it for the right reasons and you will refine it and you will get better.
Yeah, and that's a powerful statement. I think, if you don't know it, don't pretend you know it. It's about, swallowing your pride a little bit and admitting that you don't know or you've made a mistake, and then getting back on the horse and, like you say, going and learning what you don't know. Just keep growing and keep chasing those things until you do have the confidence and to overcome that fear.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely, man. What's future plans, mate? What's on the horizon for you guys? I know you've recently launched a podcast and other things are sort of going well. What would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, on that side of things, it's to hire more coaches. My main thing is offering a career for people. And that's not a revenue share. That's not, people renting their own space and doing it. I want to have PTs that have a career and have growth in their career, because I feel like it's the one area, like, why shouldn't you have a career as a PT? Now, of course, people want to work for themselves. That's cool. But there's a lot of people that don't. But there's still coaches. They're still coaches, and all they want to do is coach. So on that side of things, it's to continue growing the personal training side of things, hire more coaches, service more coaches, and actually just make them better. And then the other side of things is to impact more personal trainers externally. So if that can happen, it gives me space to do the things that we're doing currently to get good information out there for coaches so that people have a career on their own if they want to do things. So that's kind of like where my passion lies and where the future holds. But hey, has it ever gone to plan? This is the thing, isn't it? So it's like, enjoy the ride. I just want to have fun with it, mate. Fulfillment is my major thing. If I'm not feeling fulfilled, then I think, why the fuck am I doing this? And I think that's why we've lasted so long. It's because it's not imposter syndrome. We enjoy doing what we do. And until the day that I don't enjoy it anymore, I will continue doing the things that I do.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful message, mate. I think it's important to realize. And you've had plenty of shifts along the way, mate. Like, if you reflect on, even the stories that you've shared with us tonight, going from the commercial gym to, where you are now, having your own space, to being a mentor to coaches. Like you say, there's so much opportunity in this industry. We can change, we can switch and find another way to fulfill, what makes us happy.
Yeah, there's tons of opportunity. And I think that's probably the last line that everyone needs to take on, is that it's there if you want it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's there if you want it.
Yeah, wicked, mate. Appreciate your time, man. I think we've covered a lot today, and there's been some gold nuggets in there with what you've shared. So thank you for jumping on, and I hope a lot of people get a bit out of this, mate. But yeah,
nice, mate. Awesome. Good chatting. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too, man. Take it easy. All the best.